Okay, we're gonna do this thing. Okay, 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 hi guys. Okay, yep. I need to get rid of, oh, there we go, okay.
Tony, you've been so busy. It's so nice seeing you all over the place.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. It's good to
Mhm,
see you.
mhm.
We're going to give people about 5 minutes to wander in. It's good to see everybody so far. Welcome.
Hi, David.
Hi, Joanne. I'm trying to arrange my screen so I can see who's over there on the hidden side.
Gallery view. Nice.
I can't see Mary, but she's over there. Hi, Mary.
Oh,
Can't
hi,
see
hi, David. Hi. I'm like a child at the computer.
No, this is my problem. I just can't. I don't know. You're like a child. I'm like, how do I make other people show up on the screen? Not gonna happen. Oh, there's that. There, I found a button that does that.
I want to unmute quickly to say hi to Nuha. Hi, Nuha.
Hi, Mary.
Hey,
Hi.
Nuha.
Good. Joanne and everybody. Avery.
Oh no, I left.
I always feel like, whenever or we're sort of waiting, even though this is just a couple minutes, that all this dead air just feels deadly. That we should either have, our theme song playing, which means that we have to have a theme song. So there's another thing to put on our to-do list for Kimbilio. We need a Kimbilio theme song. And I've got some candidates in mind. And or either that or we should be playing, sort of what else could be going on underneath other than a theme song. Um, And then this is me also remembering that if people have their cameras off, then we won't be able to see them. So that it's okay for people to have their cameras off. You know, we'll oh, there's Tamara. Hi, Tamara. People are now showing up in the grid. Oh, Bossa Nova. There you go. That's a Michaela suggestion. I like that. Um, I think some nice hardcore rap just in the background or whatever. That we'll figure it out. We'll have a theme song. And or something more elegant. We'll figure it out. Welcome everybody. My name is David Haynes. I'm the board chair of Kimbilio and really pleased and honored to welcome you to tonight's reading featuring Toni Ann Johnson and Avery Irons. Toni Ann and Avery are winners of the inaugural Screen Door Press publishing submission. Screen Door Press is a brand new, um, I just lost the word. It's a brand new imprint published by the University of Kentucky Press and edited by esteemed novelist Crystal Wilkinson. And the initial competition was announced in 2000, early in 2024, I believe, and open to writers across the diaspora. And it was a really thrill to find out in last year that both of the winners, or both of the books selected for the inaugural publication season, were written by Kimbilio Fellows. For those of you who are, that's very much worth applauding. Um, and so we're really honored to be Kimbilio is really honored to be a part of the initial legacy for this important new press. And for those of you who are joining us this evening, afternoon and evening, who are have books that are ready to be sent out into the world, I believe they're reading until the end of this month, if I'm correct, or did they just close?
It's 20th,
So
the
the
last day
20th.
of submissions. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're taking submissions, and this is such a wonderful initiative. And for those of you who track such things and pay attention to such things, one of the things for me that is really important about what they've done this time is that the books are gorgeous. And if you haven't seen either or both of these books, and I see Mary's holding up a copy of Avery's book. And there's Toni and holding up a copy of her book. These books are gorgeous. They're so beautifully produced. And that's one of the things you really like to see particularly in a small new press, that they're going to really make beautiful, high quality books. And of course, those of you who are reading or have read both books know that these are also really, really amazing stories. So it's really an honor for Kimbilio to be able to present them and share them with you tonight. For those of you who are new to Kimbilio, we are an organization of writers, or community of writers that are committed to nourishing and sustaining Black fiction writers across the community, across the United States and across the world. And it's the community part that is particularly important to us, which is really providing for readers a place where they can feel at home and feel their work cherished as they finish their initial work, and also as that work comes out into the world. And that's why tonight it's really particularly heartening to see other members of the Kimbilio family joining us today to support the work of these two Kimbilio fellows. And so as we go through the evening and listen to our two writers, I invite you to share your comments about the work, and also your questions about Kimbilio. In the chat, our administrative manager, Nuha, has placed in the link to Screen Door Press for those of you who want to know more about Screen Door Press, and also the link to our beautiful new website, the Kimbilio website, for those of you who want to really learn more about Kimbilio. And we welcome your questions, comments there, and also your support will be most appreciated. With that, all that intro out of the way, it's my pleasure to present to you or introduce to you our first reader. And I've got to toggle around. It's so obnoxious when you have to figure out how your own computer works. But bear with me. I actually am figuring it out. Our first reader tonight is Toni Ann Johnson. And Toni Ann Johnson won the Flannery O'Connor Award for her short story collection, Light Skin Gone to Waste, which was selected for the prize and edited by Roxane Gay. The book was a finalist for the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work and a finalist for the Soroyan Prize. A novel, Homegoing, is linked to the story collection and was released in 2021 after winning Accents Publications' inaugural Novella contest. But Where is Home is linked to the two previous books and was a winner of the Screen Door Press Fiction Prize, selected by Crystal Wilkinson, who also edited. Johnson has been a fellow with Callaloo, Hurston Wright, and of course, Kimbilio, and she's joining us tonight from Los Angeles. Please welcome Toni Ann Johnson.
Hi, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Okay, I'm going to be reading from the beginning of the novella in the book. And if you've been reading the book, what you'd know by this point is that Maddie is living in a 99% white town, and she's kind of isolated. And this is in 1980. We're in Monroe, New York, and she is 17. And this is her cousin, Susie. So one day, my mom tells me Aunt Velma told her that Zeke Odom finally asked Maddie out. We're excited for her, but Aunt Velma read it in Maddie's diary. So we can't say Snickers till Maddie asks Aunt Velma if she can go, which is like a whole week later, and then we all have to act surprised. I do act surprised. Then I feel bad and tell Maddie her mother told my mother, but I tell her she can't confront her mother because then my mother will know I told, and Aunt Velma will know my mother told, and that will be a mucked up mess. Anyway, when Zeke Odom picks Maddie up to take her to the movies, according to Aunt Velma, he just toots the horn outside. Now, in the boy's defense, Maddie and her parents moved to a big ass estate in a neighborhood across town, this white town, from where they used to live. And the main house has an insanely long driveway. My mom says it's not that impressive because it's not like Monroe is Greenwich, Connecticut. It's nothing but a hick town filled with average white folks, according to my mom. Maybe so, but it's easy to see how it could be intimidating because you can't tell which entrance is the front. The only door you can see from the street side leads to an enormous glass porch that kind of looks like a greenhouse, and it doesn't have a front door look. The real front door is up a stone stairway around the back that leads to a patio that overlooks a red bean-shaped pool, and down a hill behind that, there's a tennis court. And there are two cottages. The small one is close to the main house, and the bigger one is like an acre away and sits above the tennis court at the opposite end of the property and has its own driveway. I mean, Hicktown or not, maybe Zeke Odom was like, what kind of palatial craziness? The place looks like a small village. Maybe he didn't know where the hell to go. Maddie tries to run out the front door, which is, as I said, in the back, but Aunt Velma grabs her, rubs some rouge off her face, and says in that gritted teeth Aunt Velma growl, "You're not going any damn where. That kid needs to get his ass out of his car and come to the door like a gentleman." He beeps again, and Maddie sasses off to Aunt Velma, "You're crazy, let me go." And when Aunt Velma doesn't, Maddie, risking her life, says, "You're just jealous because no one likes you." And then Aunt Velma pops Maddie in the mouth. I'm hearing this on the extension while Aunt Velma is telling my mother as if slapping Maddie is as normal as making dinner or walking the dog. My mom doesn't say it to Aunt Velma, but later she kisses her teeth and tells me, "Your auntie vex with that arrogant man she never should have married and taken it out upon Maddie." I've been telling my mother about this stuff for years. She didn't believe me. Since we were small, I've been seeing Aunt Velma pop Maddie. Sometimes for little things like eating the last snack cake or leaving a towel on the floor. And just a few months ago, I was at the house when red-headed, freckled, peppermint patty looking Lisa Megna, who used to be their neighbor before they moved, called Maddie and asked to borrow a pair of crutches that were in their basement. They weren't even Aunt Velma's. The previous owner left them there. Maddie brought him upstairs and asked if Lisa could take them. Lisa was still on the line, and I saw Aunt Velma morph into a maniac. Her eyes flashed wild, and she chased Maddie around the dining room table, holding up one of those crutches, screaming, "What have I told you about putting me on the spot?" Finally, she caught Maddie and beat her to the ground with that crutch. I was shaking. I didn't know if I should be scared, sad, or call the cops. We went into Maddie's room after, and she cried. When I told my mother, she said, "Yeah, stop them tales about your auntie." And she waved me away like I was a funky smell. But I did try. So Zeke beeps a third time, and Maddie starts crying. According to Aunt Velma, she's crying because she thinks Zeke's gonna leave, not because she just got hit in the face. And when he beeps a fourth time, Maddie rips her arm away and runs off. The boy never does get out of the car, not even to open the door for Maddie. Aunt Velma says Zeke has no damn class, and on that point, I concur. Maddie tells me later that while he's driving, they stop at a red light. Zeke kisses her and puts his thick tongue way deep in her mouth and almost down her throat. She isn't expecting all that. It's very fast, she says, and out of nowhere, and it doesn't feel one bit romantic. I'm listening to her tell the story, and what it sounds like to me is that Zeke Odom was hoping to not even get to the damn movies. Sounds like he was angling to park somewhere and get Maddie into the back seat. The thing is, Maddie has no experience messing with boys. She's not fast like that. Sounds like he thinks she is, though. And I'm wondering why. What's his rush? Why is
Wait, Tony Ann, wait,
he
wait, wait. Um, could you re your audio went mute. Sorry.
for how long? Did it just go mute?
Yeah, it's just went mute. Yeah.
Okay. Oh. Um, okay. So this is what I think. Zeke's around nothing but white boys, and they think black girls are easy. It's in their genetic memory. Any enslaved woman was theirs if they wanted her. Now they see black chicks in movies playing long-legged hoes and hot pants. They hear Donna Summer singing, "Love to love you, baby," and the bells, "Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?" And because they don't know any real black girls, they think all of them are ready to spread their legs. And here Zeke is, this lone brother around all these clueless jocks. So I bet that's where he's getting his misinformation. Poor Maddie. Even though she thought she liked Zeke because she pretended he was something special, she didn't know his ass from Adam or Eve. And she made up what she wished he'd be, a dude who'd really dig her and think she was special too. She is, but how would he know that? They do end up at the movies that night, but they don't really watch. They mostly make out the whole time, and he feels her up. And she tells me she doesn't really like it. I tell her, "Why did you keep making out with him then?" And Maddie says, "What? I thought I had to. Isn't that what I was supposed to do?" I'm like, no, Maddie. If you don't want to do something with some stupid ass boy, you don't do it. You tell him to take you home. She says, "Then he won't like me, Susie." And I say, "So what?" I feel bad for her. I don't even tell her about my new boyfriend, who's fine as hell and really nice, because Marcel is my third boyfriend and Maddie's never even had one. Too bad Maddie's going to NYU instead of an HBCU like Howard, where I'm going, because I don't know if she's going to have that many options at NYU. I really hope she comes to visit me. I know there's going to be so many fine brothers at Howard, and even though I already have a boyfriend, I cannot wait. After the terrible date with Zeke Odom, Maddie said she was giving up on boys. She didn't even want to talk to him. She said she needed to get out of Monroe, go to college, and then start dating. Well, last weekend I'm visiting her, and we go to a party at her hazel-eyed friend Julia's house where I'm watching all these no rhythm having kids dancing to God knows what, because it damn sure wasn't the beat. And Zeke shows up. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the boy looks tasty. I see him and I'm thinking, damn, this dude's pretty. Like Muhammad Ali. Smooth, peanut butter colored skin, thick eyebrows, big boulder like shoulders. Zeke Odom's as fine as Maddie's been saying he is. I can see why she pined for him all these years. And turns out I was right about what he was hoping for on that date. This is what went down. We're all sitting on Julia's basement steps. He's up top, heads our way. When he sees Maddie, he plops himself on the stair above us, meets me, makes chit chat. Then I move down a step, like I'm gonna talk to Peppermint Patty looking Lisa and Julia, who are sitting there. But we all listen and hear him say to Maddie, "Can I ask you a personal question and you won't get mad?" I'm thinking, oh shit, something foul's about to come out his fine ass lips. He doesn't wait for her to answer before he says, "You ever been fucked?" Julia looks at me, eyes bugged out like a bumblebee's, like she can't believe what she's hearing. Patty Lisa slaps a palm to her forehead, and all I can do is try not to laugh. Maddie's mouth falls open, but nothing comes out. And he says, "Well, do you want to be?" I see Maddie's tongue lying limp in her mouth. She looks catatonic staring at him like one of those damn near dead people you see in the old folks' home. And he says, "Because every other girl I ever went out with, I always fucked them on the first date." Maddie's eyes, cheeks, and lips droop down her sad face like a wilting flower, and then tears start falling, and she's palming them off, embarrassed. And then something interesting happens. I see this look splash over Zeke Odom, like a cold glass of water landed in his face. I would say the brother's having an oh shit moment. Like he realizes he got it completely wrong about my cousin. And he says, "Oh man, did um, I thought you, I heard you wanted to." "What?" Maddie demands. "You heard stuff about me? What did you hear?" And he sighs, and in a different sounding voice, a softer, sweeter one, he says, "Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm, you're probably scared of me now. Are you? I don't want you to be scared of me." He's looking at her, trying to get her eyes to meet his, and now she won't look at him. She stares at the carpeted step below her. His hefty shoulders slump forward and he hangs his head as if he feels bad for real. Then he sighs, stands, and big as he is, he somehow looks small as he climbs back up the stairs. Patty Lisa got up and hugged Maddie. Me and Julia didn't move for a minute. I saw something in Zeke, something almost nice, that I didn't see when he was talking that shit about every other girl on the first date. I told Maddie I thought he realized he made a mistake. Maddie said she didn't care. He didn't act nice at all when they went out. She said he treated her like trash. So much for that. Maddie's pretty sure things will be better when she gets out of Monroe. I hope so. I hope they'll be better for Zeke Odom when he gets out of there too. Thank you. Thank you.
That was just terrific, Tony Ann. Thank you for that performance. I want to say that I was used performance there because I know that you are a performer, but it's even folks that are seasoned performers sometimes cannot deliver their work so beautifully, and that was just amazing. Love all of the the
Mhm.
character voices and everything. And we'll have a chance for folks to ask you more questions about the book in just a minute. And I'm just turning my video on. I keep forgetting that I need to be on. And we'll have we'll have some time for some Q&A at the end. But please do look at the comments. We've got lots and lots and lots of wonderful, wonderful comments for you. Just a second here. Our next reader is Avery Irons. Avery is the author of the novella Glass Men, which won Big Fiction Magazine's Novella Prize. Her short fiction has appeared in Sinister Wisdom, the African American Review, and Ragazine.CC. She holds an MFA in creative writing and a Bachelor of Arts in political science from the University of Illinois at Champaign, Urbana. She holds a Juris Doctor, a JD, from Columbia University School of Law. Avery was born and mostly raised in central Illinois. She currently lives in upstate New York, where she writes historical fiction and speculative fiction, and sometimes a mix of the two, while drinking lots of mugs of tea. Please welcome Avery Irons.
Thank you, David. Toni, that was fantastic. I haven't heard anybody say fine in a long time. So thank you. I enjoyed that so much. And thanks everyone for coming out tonight. So I'm going to read from my novel, Belonging to the Air, and I'm going to read from two sections. The first one starting in 1912, or I guess 1913, when the protagonist Bird is 13 years old, and she is kind of going through a hard moment in life. Her grandmother has had a stroke, and she's just had an unfortunate run-in with her kind of estranged father at a revival. And we're set in Southern Illinois. So let's dive in. The lantern was still on in Uncle Vernon's little house when they arrived well after nightfall. He came out pulling on his shirt and stopped them. Bird's heart sank. Odelia and Maddie had gone to St. Louis. Bird climbed out of the wagon as Mr. Charles stumbled through his explanation for their early return. There was a incident with the Reverend Turner, and Bird wanted to come home. He looked off into the night as he spoke. Helene and I are mighty sorry. We hadn't meant to cause anybody trouble. Everett, ma'am, y'all ain't the one that done caused the problem. I'll explain it to Maddie, Vernon said as Bird ran into his arms. That's probably for the best, said Mrs. Charles with a weary voice. Uncle Vernon's house was little more than a front room with a stove and two back rooms. He set Bird in the chair beside the little table where he took his meals and lit another lantern. A partially whittled horse sat on the table. I thought Granny was getting better, Bird asked. She is, but they got doctors in big cities that know more about these spells than country doctors. They'll be back later in the week. Bird wanted them back right now, but anything that could counteract the wearing down and quick work was fine by her. What are we going to tell your mama? He asked. She thought for a moment. Of course they couldn't tell Mama, no matter what he'd said to the teachers. That I'd never been away for so long and wanted to come back. That's called homesick. You okay? Yes, sir, she paused. I just don't understand. Don't understand what? His wife seemed mean, and his mother, too. I couldn't make out much of the girl. Bird's tongue wouldn't say sister. And with a pang, Bird realized she didn't even know her name. Why do they get him instead of us? She'd imagined the minister's wife as beautiful and saintly. She must have had something special to outrank the admittedly difficult Maddie. Uncle Vernon began sweeping up his wood shavings. Sometimes we get what we want, sometimes we don't. But it isn't fair. Fairness is stingy. You see much of it around us? Bird considered Mama's lovelessness, Granny's blindness, the threadbare clothes of her classmates, and her own full closet. The way folks in Tuckersville treated folks from Bennettsville. Why don't folks do better? Folks who are strong enough do what they can. What are you doing? So many questions. He shook his head, then cocked it to the side like Odelia did when thinking. I'm being your uncle. She shrugged as if unimpressed. He laughed aloud. Not much to that, he asked. I didn't mean any offense. You're a very good uncle. Thank you, he said. Maddie gonna find out eventually, and it's better she hears it from us than some gossip. Bird hadn't considered the rumor mill. Let's just wait a little while for Granny to get better. Uncle Vernon rubbed the gray stubble on his chin. Just a little while. Long enough so it's not too much on her at once. And the good uncle gets the little girls to sleep at a decent hour. He sent her to the spare back room to change into her nightgown. It was only after he'd mussed her hair as a tuck-in and busied himself in the front room that she thought to ask him how he was, her uncle. Everybody in Bennettsville called him uncle, but he didn't look much like the line of Abel or the line of Marion. And why did he labor when the other Bennetts did not? Monday morning brought word that Adelia needed several more days in St. Louis, that Uncle Vernon was to carry Bird to Maddie's customers to explain the delay in their work, and she was to stay with the Charles family. The pair made their own plans. She completed and delivered the easy alterations. She offered to measure for a few others, and most took her up on it. They thought it funny to watch her work, but fell into line as she assumed her mother's direct manner. In the late afternoons and evenings, she followed Uncle Vernon around for his chores. The first 2 days, he made her stay back so she wouldn't mess her dresses. On the third day, he turned to her as she crept up behind him again. Ain't you got no clothing for real work? She ran to the house for the pants her mother let her wear for fishing. With an appropriate uniform, he taught her to hammer, to repair a door hinge, and to weed in her granny's garden. He was as much a stickler for a job done right as Maddie, and she liked standing beside him and nodding with satisfaction when they finished a project. Bird enjoyed these days and her pants so much that she vowed to wear them whenever possible. In the evenings, they split the cooking as he didn't care for the sweetness of Bird's cornbread and preferred his ratio of collard and mustard greens and wanted them cooked to death. It wasn't until the fourth day, as they sat on the porch in their work clothes watching the sunset, that Bird remembered to ask him how he was her uncle. He exhaled his pipe smoke. Oh, the usual way. He considered this for the moment, making sure this answer really didn't make sense. What's the usual way? Ain't nobody ever told you not to ask too many questions. No, sir, never. She grinned at him. Well, I'm glad to be the first. Some questions better left unanswered. Then why don't everybody just call you Mr. Vernon or Mr. Bennett? That's respectful. Because you can't go to a mister's house without an appointment and your hat in your hand. Folks need Uncle Vernon? He poked his chest with pride. They come any time and know I won't be put out. In fact, I'd be offended if they didn't come when they needed me. So, you really aren't going to tell me? Mind your language, Missy. I may not talk like I got schooling, but I've been listening to people that do all my life. So, that's 1913. Then I want to jump to 1928, April, when Bird is an adult and she's moved off to New York City after having some issues with her hometown and family because she's come out as queer. So this part I want to read because it reminds me so much of like my arrival in New York City and chosen family and friends. And this is kind of the introduction to some folks that she meets that becomes really important to her in her New York years. The thing about New York City that Bird would realize much later in life is that you never notice changes as they happen. One old store closes and a new one opens and becomes a part of the landscape, like one building coming down and another going up, folks moving onto the block and folks moving away. The changes get integrated as easily as air in the lungs. Most people don't notice the little changes that add up to big changes, or the small pivot points that later are recognized as forks in the road or dead ends. Irma turned out to be a pleasant enough hospital record keeper. A year later, she brought home Rupert, who was 6 feet and 5 inches tall. Bird immediately feared for Irma's ability to feed this man and safely birth his babies. For his part, Rupert calmed his fiancée, and Bird came to appreciate the echo of his laugh throughout the building. She also appreciated that he had no qualms about asking if she ever offered a wedding dress discount for an upstairs neighbor. He'd nearly doubled over with laughter when she answered that she did, but most folks never forgave her afterward. Bird would have been happy for her New York City living to continue in this way, and couldn't have imagined anything that would have upset too much since Louise hardly raised the rents. And then came the woman needing trousers. Bird knew little about most of her clientele, just their measurements, preferences for cuts, and that they could pay. They streamed through her apartment just as white folks had moved through her mother's house. The less said, the better. This earned her a more specialized clientele, willing to pay more for her services and tip well for her discretion. People who covered designer imitations, scandalous unmentionables, or gifts that didn't match the proportions of their husbands or wives. Bird took the orders and asked only the necessary questions. When one of the men she regularly made shirts for asked about the trouser-needing woman, Bird handed him her card. Leah arrived in gabardine trousers, several sizes too big, and an ill-fitting button-down shirt. Bird took it all in and frowned. Leah stepped back. Charlie told me it was all right. It took a moment for Bird to decipher the woman's suddenly wide and frightened eyes. She brushed away Leah's concern. I'll sew you whatever you want. It just looks like we're going to have to start your wardrobe over from the beginning. She pointed at the button that wouldn't close because Leah's cup-runneth-over hips wouldn't fit into the unforgiving men's shirt, and where the shirt badly needed darts to create room for her breasts. Come in and undress down to your underclothes so I can get your true measurements. I'm not used to women being so forward, Leah grinned, moving with an impressed smoothness for her 5 feet 10 inches. Seamstresses and doctors, we're not shy and we're not cheap. Bird worked methodically and talked Leah through her colors and fabrics, heather blues to complement her ochre coloring, and breathing fabrics like cotton and linen. She pointed out styles like single-breasted suit jackets and lower-waisted pants that gave the sense of masculinity while working with her height and curves. Where are you from? Leah asked. Illinois. Everybody open there like you? No, that's why I left. What did you want them to be open about? Leah gave her a sly smile. Button-down collars, said Bird. Leah came to Bird's once a month to pick up one order and place the next. After the second visit, she stopped trying to make small talk, although she would sneak in the occasional question that Bird made short work of. You go to church? No, said Bird. The following questions about any family in New York, friends, and hobbies all elicited the same response. Bird felt Leah trying to piece together the puzzle she presented, and in her quiet moments after Leah's appointments, she found herself amused. As she sewed, she added little flourishes that she might have charged extra for, but didn't. Leah arrived late for her appointment in September. Bird pointed her to a chair while she finished up a scene on her machine. Your watch broke? She asked Leah. No, sorry, I was delayed at work. How would this woman describe her line of employment? Bird was curious, but held fast to her rule. You're a wizard at that machine. I only ever saw my mother sew at that kind of speed. She didn't teach you anything? Big girls like me end up in the fields, more money in picking cotton than sewing the family's rags together. She raised her hands, large and calloused even from city work. You give lessons? Here and there, mostly teaching daughters on the block how to mend and repair if their mothers never learned. Can you teach me? Bird laughed. You trying to put me out of business? Never that. Just curious. Bird retrieved a leftover cutting. Sit down. Let's see if you got it. It's all about knowing how to get the machine and your hands to work together. I know how to work with my hands. Leah raised an eyebrow. Bird ignored her and placed the fabric under the foot. You got the pedal? Now just press it and guide the fabric straight. Don't force it. Just guide it. Forgetting herself, Bird placed her fingers on Leah's to guide them, and then jerked them back. Leah seemed not to notice as she twisted and turned the fabric while figuring out how to control the speed. Do I have it? Leah asked once the machine purred and stitched a straight seam. With a little work, but I doubt you have the time. That's true. At least it's good to know that I could have. Bird moved aside so Leah could find the door. My clothes? Leah pointed at the shirt and slacks hanging on the rack. Sorry, Bird laughed at herself. Some of the others I work with, like mine and Charlie's clothes. Maybe you could come down this Saturday and I could introduce you around and get you some more business. I've got about all the business I can handle. If someone's really interested and you think they're all right, you can bring them with you next time. Leah opened her mouth as if to try a new angle. Please don't. Bird looked away. Am I wrong? Bird met her eye. No, you're not wrong. I've lived here long enough to see the road you walk and where it leads. Bird didn't agree with the temperance laws and didn't think much of the folks behind them, but The underground scene seemed like one bad turn following another. I come to your place every month. I've seen your road. You ain't never seen mine. Let me take you out, just as a friend. I promise. New York City, it's no place for folks who want to be left alone. But it is. Bird's memory tried to soften her half of the conversation when Leah missed her appointment the next month and the month after that. But the truth was what it was. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Now I can't drop the accent.
For those of you who are who don't already have a copy of these beautiful books, I just dropped in the chat a link to Kimbilio's bookshop where you can order these books. Avery, that was just gorgeous, and I had the advantage of already having read it and knew how gorgeous it was. But this is the first time me hearing you read it, and that makes it extra special. Um, we're gonna sort of transition here into some questions and answers, and so I'm going to start. What I think I want to do here is I really want to also to give Toni and Avery an opportunity to ask each other questions if they have a minute, and then we'll open it up. But my first question for both of you was or is. You're both entering very different kinds of sort of narrative spaces, for want of a better word. In one case, having to sort of take yourself back to adolescence. In another case, the other case, having to really imagine and enter an entirely different place and time, and which is always the thing that happens when you're writing historical fiction. And I want you to talk a little bit about, if you would, um, your process for moving into either, well, we're always moving in other characters' heads, but when they're very different from us, that's an extra challenge. And then also, going into another time and place and capturing the essence of that. So talk a little bit about each of you, a little bit about processes that you use to find those places.
You want me to go first, Avery?
Sure.
Well, there's a bunch of different times and places and a lot of different characters in this book. So the beginning takes place before Maddie's born. It's in the other realm before she's born. And so getting into that was odd, kind of, because I had to sort of figure out what would a spirit's mindset be before they're entering. And she's also entering because she wants to incarnate with Velma, who becomes her mother. And in a previous life, she was Velma's mother and didn't get it right. And so I was trying to balance and just navigate all of that and feel like the grief that that Velma's mother felt at messing up with her daughter, and then the apprehension that the same spirit has coming back to be this woman's daughter. So it was just, I use acting. I put myself in the head of those people. The spiritual realm, it was particularly interesting, and the last story is also in the spiritual realm. It's from another character's mother after the woman is dead. And so she's watching her family. It's very much a family story, sort of the spiritual trajectory of this family. So both times, like being in the spiritual realm was just a different. I had to be a higher version of myself. I had to think like somebody who's nicer and wiser and more loving than I am as a human. So that's how I did it. Just imagination, making myself those people.
I would say for me, I think place was so important and really being grounded in place and trying to recapture some of those both physical and emotional sensations and awe of sensations. So, like first arrival in New York City and just absorbing. Like, I spent a lot of time in Harlem between law school and working up there for a while, and just like walking streets, listening to people, hearing voices, and then trying really hard to imagine like what would 137th Street have been like 100 years ago, and there's photographic um, archives to help with all that, but to really try to think about what would people feel walking, and what would they have felt like after the stock market crashed, and trying to really inhabit that. And then I'm from the middle of nowhere, Illinois, so I feel like that's just in my bones. But to really remember that, and like what are the beauty of cornfields, but also like the heat of the Midwest in the summer, and the uh, the kind of awkwardness of family relationships when people don't like something that you've done or something about you. So I felt like, trying to really hold on to that and sit in it for a long time. And like I would like fall asleep thinking about it, which probably wasn't very healthy in some of it. But like going into like that drowsy place and just letting imagination go from there and hoping that I remembered everything in the morning when I woke up.
Mm.
One of the historical things in your novel is, and again, this is me speaking from St. Louis, is that you capture the of some events surrounding the East St. Louis riots, which, for those of you that don't know, are very similar to the Tulsa riots in terms of a community being destroyed, and by hostile neighbors. And so, did you have to jump into a lot of research to go there?
I did. And I was embarrassed and also angry to admit that, I was a history minor at the University of Illinois, like the flagship school, and like took lots of African American history and had never learned about the St. Louis Massacre. Like just it never like no one ever taught it, like high school, anything. So I stumbled on it and like other research about the area. And I had lived in like, I don't know if you're not from Illinois, but like Fairview Heights, and I lived around the area, and, spent some time in East St. Louis. But to get it right and to like do the neighborhoods, like looking at maps, trying to recreate best what I could, getting imagery of what the city looked like before and after. And it's helped to be informed by information like about the Tulsa massacre and like Rosewood and Florida. So there's lots of similarities across these tragedies.
Mhm. Including just the erasure, which is,
Mhm.
On this side of the river, there's a lot of buildings that are left from, the 19th century. There's almost nothing left in East St. Louis that was there in the 19th century. And again, it's completely hidden, even to people who live in this part of the country. Tony, and
Mhm.
you're working on you're sort of creating a multiverse here. So you've got characters and a storyline that's connected through a novel and a novella and now this book. So talk about that process.
Well, originally, it was one big tome. It was a 500-page book that went into the marketplace and didn't sell. And I pulled it apart, and I had one novella I published separately, and then the other book became Light Skin Gone to Waste. I had to pull things out and resubmit it because it didn't sell. So I submitted it to the Flannery O'Connor Award myself. And after just changing it and focusing more on one character. And then so I had these stories that were left over, and it's all about, the same family. It's autobiographical fiction, so it's based on my parents, my sister, my grandparents. And I looked at what the stories that were left for this new book, but I needed to make it more cohesive with a theme, and so that's why I chose. It always had things to do with home, but I bookended it, and I just sort of made it more about an exploration of what is home, for these different people. But it is a lot to keep track of because as I added new stories, I had to check and make sure, like, does this contradict anything that I already published, and are the names right, and all that stuff. So but it was, I've enjoyed it. I really like writing about these people, and I've made them fun for myself to write, even though the people they're based on weren't that fun.
I'm going to have a follow-up to that, but while I do that, if other folks that are in the audience here have questions, sort of you pop them in the chat or pop your name in the chat, and I'll call on you. And I'm sure the authors would love to hear from you as well. The follow-up I had, Tony, in was that as in the process of sort of opening it up in just into several projects, how much, I mean, did you discover new stories or things that hadn't been there in the original draft or the
Yes.
original large
Yeah.
chunk?
So particularly with this book, Crystal asked for new stories. So she asked if I had any stories that didn't make it into the other book, and I did, and I revised that, and then I pulled apart another story, made it two stories, and I wrote the opening story, which what didn't exist, and she had asked for that to be an introduction into the world for people. So if you read But Where's Home, you don't have to have read Light Skin Gone to Waste, and that new story helps readers who aren't familiar with the other books, ground them in like where we are, why we're here, and all that. So yeah, there were a few new stories.
Did you both work with Crystal as the editor? So I'd like to hear each of you talk a little bit about, working with Crystal. She's such a fabulous writer uh, you know, um, and her books are so compelling. I've never had the opportunity to meet her, but talk a little bit about working with Crystal Wilkinson as your editor.
Yeah, it was fun, and you also see the power of her her brain and like her understanding of nuance. And so I felt like she spent a fair bit of time working with me on like what are those little things you can do that make it more real or that really bring home the emotional impact of things that were like, okay, this is a 9 emotional impact, but we can get it to a 10, and I want you to think about this, which was really helpful, especially after you've been in it for so long. And it speaks so much like there's overlap between my life and this book, but separate 100 years and some different things. So you get so caught up in like your view of a situation versus she's, pulling you out and kind of pushing you to take it to a different level. And then she also just gave me like the hard work of like, read it this time for this, and read it this time for this, and read it this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've already read this book 1,000 times, but I'm about to read it 1,000 more. Which is good in the end.
I had worked with Crystal before, so when I did the Hurston Wright fellowship, she was my mentor. So she had worked on with me on the last story, so I kind of knew how she worked, and I loved working with her. And then I did a residency with her at the Atlantic Center for the Arts, and we worked on the novella that I read from. But putting the whole thing together, because it's a linked collection, she had me read an essay by David Joss called Stacking Stones. And that made such a difference because it was all about sort of how to link one thing to the next, like how to repeat images and motifs and sort of string them through so that every time you come to one of those images, it has a stronger meaning. It sort of it builds over time. And then just like things that the characters call each other. It was a lot of different ways that she helped me thread things together and just make it more cohesive. So that was great. I recommend that essay, Stacking Stones by David Joss. It's really good.
Thanks. I know that we've got a lot of writers in the room, so I'm sure folks are making that note, and
Mhm.
because I know folks, many people are working on things that have those kind of linkages,
Mhm.
and it's really good to consider how to make a book like that really cohere.
Mhm.
Um, any questions for do you have any questions for each other?
Mm.
You may have
I
had a
have a
chance to talk
question,
all through it.
Tony. So you said it earlier that it's the characters that are fun, but maybe not so much fun in real life. And I'm just curious, was there a particular character who was harder to write or harder to be in touch with, either by process or just, I think the characters speak sometimes to me, and sometimes they don't want to talk, which is hard.
Yeah, well, the character of Velma was um was both the hardest to write and also at times the most fun. Because her voice is really sharp and distinct. And so, and I grew up with that voice, and so I know it really well. But, there's abuse in the book, and so the parts where Maddie and Velma are in scenes together, and I'm sort of having to be both of them, that was hard. It was also, in some ways, rewarding and insightful to put myself in that character's point of view, because even as she's abusive, she's justifying it in her own way, and so like figuring out what that was. But yeah, that was it was hard emotionally just to relive some of that stuff. So yeah, I'm trying to think of a question for you. I just read the opening of the
Okay.
book, and I don't know if I have a question, but I just did have a comment about how much I love the relationship between Bird and her grandmother. And just I I don't know, it just with little few words, like you can feel, you really feel the depth of that love, and the tension between Maddie and the grandmother and Bird is really great. We both have Maddie characters, which I thought was funny. What, there was one other thing. Now I've forgotten something else that I wanted to say. I feel like there's a lot that you do in the subtext that I think is really strong. Like at first, I didn't know what was interesting or what was unusual about like when her father came. I thought they had just, maybe they weren't together anymore, but the way that you reveal those things, I thought was really masterful, and it was fun because you don't tell us, like you kind of let the reader discover it. So I love that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let's see. We're about at the end of our time, and let me just say that both these books are extraordinary, and I think you're going to love them if you haven't already had a chance to take a look at them. They're very different, and that's one of the things that makes me excited about Screen Door Press is that just coming out of the gate here, they're already publishing. Books that speak to the African American experience, but in very, very different ways. And that's just exciting. I can't wait to see what they do next. And I also can't wait to see what Toni and Avery do next. Before we close up, let's all give them one more round of applause. Throw some more of those hand claps up on the screen, if you would.
Thank you.
It's a thank you both for being here with us tonight. A reminder that as I posted up in the earlier in the chat that both of these books are available, as is Toni Ann's earlier book, Light Skin Gone to Waste, in the Kimbilio bookshops. So if you'd like to support us, that's a great way to do it. It's also a great way to support these writers, and a reminder that that's actually how we support writers. Is by buying their books. And so if you've already got a copy, go buy another copy and give it out as a gift and get these books around in the world. And the other great thing about small press books like these is that they have what I call a long tail, which means that they're out there in the world now and they're going to be out there in the world for a while, and people are going to continue to discover them and come back to them. And a small press like this, or small press like Screen Door, or Mary Schlechter's press, Four-Way Books, they're going to keep these books around. So keep recommending them to people, and keep sharing them with your friends. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight for this very special event. And keep your eye on the Kimbilio website. We'll be doing it again across the year as more of our fellows publish, and fellows and friends. And just want to thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.